Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. It's been a while now since I have added a new video to my Homeschooling 101 series, so I thought it was time that I would do that. And today's topic is something that I have been asked about multiple times, and that's this. How do we figure out what subjects to teach? When you're new to homeschooling, sometimes figuring out what subjects to teach can be a little bit confusing. But I want to reassure you that it is actually one of the simplest things that you can do in your homeschool. So first of all, there are actually two steps to this question. The first step is the term subjects. What the term subject actually refers to are those basic things that are taught in every school, and that a lot of homeschool regulations, depending on what state you live in, will tell you that you do have to introduce these things and to teach these things throughout the year to your kids. And these are those subjects like English, math, social studies, science, health, physical education, art, music, and those are the basic subject areas. But I'm sure that that's not really what most people are asking when they say, what subject should I teach? I think that what a lot of people are actually asking when they say that is, what topics in those subject areas should I be teaching? Or maybe further down the line, when their kids are in high school, they might be asking, what electives should I introduce? What sorts of history should I introduce? What sorts of science should I introduce? And so that's what I wanted to share some tips with you about today. So one of the best ways for you to figure out what topics you're going to cover in those basic subject areas, you can easily just gauge your kids' interests. And really, this works for all ages. So for example, if you have a child who is really into animals, then you could study animals for science depending on their age. Or if they're in high school, you could look into zoology or maybe even marine biology if, for example, they like to learn about marine life. If you have a child who is really into bugs, you could study insects or maybe arachnids when they are in their elementary school years. And when they are up into those higher grade levels, you could turn that into entomology. Same thing goes with reptiles. If your child likes reptiles, learn about reptiles for science. And when they're older, if they still enjoy that, herpetology. You just really have to know what to label it as when they get older, but you can always incorporate your child's interests into their school. That is an easy way to figure out what topics you're going to be including in your homeschool routine. And it doesn't just have to be science. I always go, with the science examples because they're easy to come up with, but there are some kids who are really interested in the Civil War. There are a lot of kids who are really interested in Egyptian history. My daughter is one of them. So that's just another example of the way that you can decide what topics or what time periods, what civilizations you're going to cover for social studies, which usually does include history and civics and geography. Now, a lot of times the states will tell you specifically that you have to learn about your state history. And some states will also tell you that you have to learn U.S. history as well. But the rest of the year is kind of carte blanche. You can learn about anything when it comes to history. And the same thing goes with art. The same thing goes with music. Always take your child's interests into account because, of course, they're going to pay the most attention if they really like what you're learning about. So another way that you can decide what sorts of topics you're going to talk about or you're going to teach in your homeschool are those things that you as the parent feel are important, but that your child might not necessarily gravitate towards on their own. For example, with me, I thought that the kids learning about the American Revolution was really important. And of course, we do have to learn about United States history with our homeschool regulations. But, it's easy to kind of just skim over things like a lot of textbooks do. I really wanted to do an in-depth research or in-depth study into the American Revolution, not just read a couple chapters on it and have that be done with it. I want them to know it in and out. I also want the kids to know the Constitution, something else that a lot of kids probably would not gravitate towards on their own. The Declaration of Independence. There are a lot of other areas that, you as the parent might feel that are crucial for your kids to know, because they are going to not only help them to get along in life, but that there are some subjects that you really do have to be adequately versed in if you are going to have intelligent conversations a lot of times, especially if you are going to teach your children, how to stand up for what they believe in, how to debate properly. These are all reasons that you might want to teach your kids things that you feel are important, but that they might not have chosen on their own. Now, another tip for picking out your topics is you might want to choose things that you think your kids would enjoy, but that they might not know anything about. There are a lot of things that I introduced my kids to that they wouldn't have figured out on their own. So for example, one example is Easter Island. When my kids heard about Easter Island, they actually thought that there was an island with Easter eggs on it, and with, bunnies and jelly beans and all of that. And they never actually asked to go any further into it. But for me, I got the idea, this is pretty recently, that we're going to do a little study on Easter Island so that they can see what it actually is and learn the history of that. You might have, a lot of ideas that as an adult you've been exposed to that your kids haven't been. So of course you've had a much more widespread vision of what the world is comprised of. So yes, if you have something in your mind that your kids haven't heard of, but that you're pretty sure is right up their alley, that is another way for you to decide what topic you want to cover in that subject. And so the last way that I'm going to talk about today, I'm sure there's other ways that you can choose what sorts of topics you want to include in your homeschool, are for your kids' future career possibilities, especially when your kids are starting to get older. This is when it is really crucial to start including all of their interests, or at least some of their interests, some of their really, really deep interests into their homeschool routine, because very often these are the things that that is going to help them in a future career. A lot of times kids will move in the direction that their interests go. They follow their interests. Following interests, something that I talk about all the time. But yeah, so when you have a high schooler, this is something that's really important. You want to give them a voice in this. Don't have them studying things that you know that they're not going to remember because they have absolutely no interest in. If it is one of those things that you feel is important, then by all means, absolutely yes. But, if it's something that you feel that you should study just because you've heard that someone else is studying, or maybe it's in, the textbook that you've been using, you might want to second guess that. So what I really want to bring up with you right now, though, is that I've talked about kids' interests is one way, and things that you feel are important is another way, or things that you think your kids would enjoy, or, things that are going to help them with their future career possibilities. But what I want to say is that the best thing that you could probably try to do is a mixture of those things. Instead of doing only your kids' interests, put in some things that you think that your kids should learn, or that you think that they would like to learn. When your kids are older, again, you definitely want to incorporate the things that they're interested in, because those are the things that they are going to be looking towards when they get older, especially if they're going to college. That's another thing that you might want to look into, is what do those colleges require for them to get in? Do they require biology? Do they require lab? Chemistry? Some of them require anatomy. It all depends. So that's really something else that if you have a teenage homeschool student, that you might want to keep in mind too. But be creative, even when it comes to your high school, your homeschoolers' high school years. It doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be that typical, biology in 9th grade, chemistry in 10th grade, physics in 11th grade, or however it is that your schools do it. It doesn't have to be that way. If you have a teenager who's really into marine biology, do marine biology. If you have a student who is really into entomology or herpetology or Egyptology, let them do that. I even have a daughter, my oldest daughter, when she was being homeschooled for high school, she was learning kinesics, and that is actually the science of body language, because that is something that she was deeply, deeply interested in. So when it comes to deciding what subjects to teach, it's important to remember that it's not going to look the same with every family, and it should not look the same. If it does look the same as every other family, then there's probably something wrong with it, because you want to remember that your kids are individuals. Your kids have their own interests, and they have their own path that they're going to be following. And what a great opportunity for them to be homeschooled and to allow them to learn about the things that support that. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you might be able to leave one here. YouTube usually disables my comments. The past few days they haven't been. Who knows? If they are disabled, just head on over to Instagram. You can find me there and leave a comment there. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box to that as well. And today I want to give a shout out to one of my newest patrons, Root. Thank you so much, Root, for becoming a supporter of mine. I really appreciate it, and I am so glad that my videos and the things that I talk about have been helpful to you. And I hope you all have a great day.